Hello, and thanks for checking out the video. Today I'm just having a look at this little gem in the middle of the forest, and hard to do it justice on the camera, but it's an ancient burial mound, and I really like this one. It's far off the beaten track. You have to bushwhack to get here, and yeah, it's a little bit spectacular. There's this is one of a group of 2 or 3, I think, possibly 4, but they're rather insignificant. They're further over there. You'd walk past them and miss them, whereas this beast, wow, yeah, this is here. These barrows, or tumulus as they're known, are quite common around here. They're quite common in Europe generally, as I understand it, but it's not often you find such a good one and have it all to yourself, because, as I say, you really have to bushwhack to get to this one, which just, apart from its size and shape, it just makes it that little bit more special to me anyway. You can get quite a good view of the surrounding area here. Well, not far, a few hundred metres, but just a few hundred metres into the forest. And tonight I'm going to try and camp close to this ancient site, and yeah, hopefully get some good vibes from it. Yeah, we'll see. Plash palatka. This isn't my usual one. My usual one's, well, it's much more like the Russian one, but I think it's Romanian. This one here is, I believe it's East German, with a very sort of East German army Stricktarn camouflage, I think they call it. Yeah, so I went for this one because I've been looking at them and I thought they were more lightweight, and it certainly is more lightweight. It's a different kind of cotton. I can't afford Ventile cotton, but I've got a feeling this might be close to what it's like if you can afford it. So it seems a reasonable canvas, but much more lightweight, and probably not as robust as my other Plash palatka, which, as I say, is, I think, a Romanian one. I've got on order a Russian one, just to compare that as well. They're not very expensive, and they're all cotton canvas, so they tend to fit the bill. Yeah, just general purpose bits of kit really that you can do anything with, and this is in a lean-to configuration using the actual Plash palatka for the ground sheet as well. So absolute minimal gear tonight, even down to half a blanket. Yeah, really trying to keep the weight down, but it's probably taking it to a little bit too much of an extreme, but we'll see. One of the reasons I think this one is a particularly good barrow or tumulus is it's got this large dimple in the middle, and your imagination can run riot. But I do believe that some of the burial mounds actually had a structure inside, and if they were putting bodies as opposed to cremations inside, that would be a place they could put them. And you know, when you think about it, timber and stone would have been the building materials of choice, and you know, in over 1,000 years any timber's not going to last. So I just wonder if perhaps this large hollow in the middle is where perhaps it's collapsed over time, what the area that the corpses were put, you know, something we'd probably call a vault or a tomb. Yeah, and maybe it's collapsed down, and that will account for this big dimple in the middle. You know, you'll have to excuse that large beech tree. I mean, that probably over 200 years old, but it just shows the age of these things, you know. Yeah, I wonder if that's the case. I'm no archaeologist, I'm no historian, but it might explain this strange shape. It's interesting point about this particular barrow or burial mound, shall we call it. It's in a wood that until recently was designated open access land. Open access land in the UK is land that the public have the right of way, so you can go off the footpaths, you can go off the bridle paths. It's really the right to roam, and that's what you have on access land. There's not a lot of it in the UK, but this area was or still could be, because if, for example, you look at the latest paper map, and Ordnance Survey as the organisation in the UK that sort of probably, it's government funded as I understand it, and it's probably the authority on things like footpaths and boundaries, certainly when it comes to mapping out most of the UK. So you look on the latest paper map for this area from the Ordnance Survey, which I think is about 2016. 2016 is probably the latest updated version of the paper map. I have it actually of this area, and this is all open access land, so we're allowed to get to this tomb we can roam across the forest and we can find this tomb. But you look on the latest digital map, and apparently the digital maps are more accurate because they're up to date more often, and half of this forest is no longer open access. So, and that includes this area here. So it's what you call privately owned. I mean, albeit it's probably Forestry Commission, which again is a large government granted organisation as I understand it. But still, in theory, no longer have the right to roam across this forest, so you would probably no longer have the right to gain access to this little ancient gem here, assuming that the digital map is correct and the up-to-date paper map is not correct. I did email the Ordnance Survey people and got a series of replies, and they do say you should rely on the digital maps. They're updated, so I don't understand why half of this forest is sliced up in open access and the other half isn't, but there might still be some confusion there. But going by the latest digital map, where we're standing now today and this ancient monument, you know, we no longer have the right really to visit it, not legally anyway, which is a little bit upsetting really, to think that that you can't visit these ancient places. It's rather sad, you know. It's something that I don't really agree with, you know. Perhaps it's a bit presumptuous and a bit bold for me to think that this is perhaps part of our archaeological heritage, you know, and these sort of sites should be available to anyone, you know, anyone in the world really, but especially people perhaps that live in the country or are staying in the country have a right to these areas to absorb the atmosphere. I can understand if it was Ministry of Defence land where there might be ordnance, there might be dangers. There's reasons certain parts of land need to be protected from the public, for the safety of the public and for the safety of the operatives on site. For example, large industry, areas of land which probably contain archaeological treasures sometimes have to be protected and sealed off. Agriculture as well, you know, it's an important industry, and you can understand if this was a prime agricultural area, perhaps this this burial mound shouldn't be obtainable from members of the public, because perhaps, again, you know, farm working, and it might be too risky for all concerned. But in a forest like this, you know, I think it's a shame that people, in theory, will be put off by coming here because they feel they can't leave the footpath. You know, you're allowed on the footpath, but that's it, because it's no longer access land. And that's a shame. As I understand it, in Scotland, they have a different bent on the whole thing. Pretty much everywhere there, apart from a few sort of national parks and obviously private gardens and things like that, are open access to everyone. And the emphasis is on people knowing how to behave in the countryside. And I think that's a better way of doing it, rather than seal things off and you know, boundaries and rules against people going to areas. Put the responsibility on the public themselves to treat the countryside with respect, you know, so you can go into places, and if it's all common sense rules, you leave them as you found them, you know, no damage, you mustn't take anything, certainly not dig anything up, and just leave the place as you found it, you know. And if you can do that, I think you should perhaps, you know, it's perhaps your heritage, this, and you have a right to go and look at it. egg fried rice tonight. Not very vegan, I know, but there was eggs in the house and I didn't want to waste them. There's rices in here along with dehydrated mushrooms and dehydrated peas and some soya chunks which are bought, and that can all go in the pot and that'll all be rehydrated. The vegetables will rehydrate and the soya will rehydrate while the rice cooks. So that would be the rice and most of the vegetables done. Just cover them in water. Give it the odd stir. Get that on the heat because we're losing light now. Get the candle lantern ready. These reflectors are pretty good. They increase the light, or certainly below the lantern, they increase the light significantly because one candle isn't particularly strong light, and when you're relying on it for a lot of the night, and it's good to maximise the light output from your single candle. And I can just hang that up. I'll hang it up further over. Darkness falls on the burial mound. A lot of these, I believe, are Anglo-Saxon sites. So probably most of the burial ceremonies would have been sort of pagan type ceremonies. Although I understand that there's some theory that towards the end of the Anglo-Saxon period there might have been some Christian type burials going on these sites as well. The other thing to bear in mind is they might go back much further than that, because as often happens with religions, especially, you know, modern religions, you can see it happening where churches are built on old sites, and churches are quite often built on pagan sites. And apparently some of these burial sites were borrowed, perhaps from, say, the Bronze Age. A burial mound was reused again by the Anglo-Saxons. So yeah, it could be a long line of important ancestors buried under all that lot. A really delicate job of decanting the cooked rice and vegetables onto this little tiny plate, because we only have one pot, of course, so we have to use it multiple times. I'm going to dice this as well, actually. Coconut oil in there. It's a bit easier to carry than vegetable oil, and it has multiple uses, even a bit of first aid or cosmetic type, skin type, treatment type use. Cool, that's steaming. I think this Plash palatka is smaller than the standard size, unbelievably. Yeah, definitely not got as much cover from this rain as I have with my other one. Hard to believe they'd make it any smaller. 6 foot square is pretty much as small as you can get for something to be useful like this. Wow. Yeah, that's toasty. Fried rice in the rain. It's 7:15 on a very damp and a misty morning. Kept the fire going all night, so I was up on a regular basis. Well, not up, but awake and just throwing a few sticks on. And in that way I kept reasonably warm. It wasn't a particularly cold night, I don't think. It was set to go down to 7 degrees centigrade, something like that for this time of year. That's you know, that's probably above an average night in the southern part of the UK. So yeah, by keeping the little fire going and the windshield that really acts as a reflector, just keeps this part of the shelter warm. So consequently, this very small half a wool blanket I carried today, just about did the job. Yeah. So yeah, a reasonable night. Burial mound. Yeah, quite atmospheric this morning. Yeah, good vibes. one of the disadvantages of using natural fibre cord. It gets very stiff and swollen in damp conditions, and makes untying the knots a lot harder.